Final Fantasy fans, welcome to the very first episode of Mognet. I'm your host, Chef Monkey, and I am beyond excited to launch this podcast with you all. Each episode will be diving into the incredible world of Final Fantasy, covering everything from the games, music, and lore to the personal stories from our special guests. To kick things off, we've got an amazing guest, Zane Lionhart. He's known for his fantastic Final Fantasy XIV content, and today we're going to explore his journey through the series, as well as his gil-making tips, his love for this community, and everything else he does to do with the game. Zane, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
All right, let's get started. We'll go right back to the beginning. How did you get started gaming?
Well, it's a funny story. My brother had a friend who lived a couple of houses down from me, playing on his Super Nintendo. And he was playing Mario RPG. Funny enough, it was the first Squaresoft game that I saw ever. And I was like, ooh, that looks like fun. I was already playing like the regular Mario 1, 2, and 3. And when I saw that, I was like, I really want to, play Mario RPG. And I used to play the living bejesus out of that throughout my life. Even during the summertime, all me and my brother did was play Mario RPG. And that's where I got into the RPG genre. I was usually into platformers like Sonic, Mario, Mega Man, and stuff like that. But slowly, I started getting into Final Fantasy, which was the first game that I actually played was Final Fantasy VIII. But the first one that I actually tried was Final Fantasy IX, which unfortunately did not appeal to me. It was too cartoonish for me, so Final Fantasy VIII was more, human beings. The graphics not as great, but it still held my attention, and that was the first Final Fantasy game that I played and beat, and then after that went from 10, skipped 11 because I didn't know MMOs at the time, didn't have internet until probably 2012. Then after that, played 12, 13, 13-2, Lightning's Return. 14, I was probably in August of 2013 when I went into GameStop that day and I saw a giant cardboard cutout of Gaius. And I went home and I researched Final Fantasy XIV. It was still, I think, in the beta or alpha stage, and I was like, okay, this looks interesting. I wasn't 100% sold on it until I looked into it a little bit more. And then it's like, well, try the free trial. So, okay, I bought it. They didn't tell me this was an MMO or you had to have a subscription to play the game. I just bought it, went home, created my character, had to play in EU because NA was all full at the time, so I played in Odin. And for about a good half of the year, I was on Odin. I switched over to Gilgamesh, which I am right now, in 2014 because when I was playing the game, I was stuck on Garuda, and I didn't know how to do her mechanics because of the pillars.
Yeah.
So who was the first YouTuber that I found? None other than Mr. Happy himself. And he was the motivation that I needed to swap over to NA, so I paid the, 15 or 18 bucks to swap over to Gilgamesh. And basically, I left my free company in Odin, made my own here, and Gilgamesh made a crap ton of friends, and I've been playing this game ever since I subbed to the game after my free trial ran out, and I have never unsubbed to this game, and I've been playing basically since day one straight. Every single day of my life, I get up, go to work, come home, play Final Fantasy XIV, and then when the PlayStation gave us about an hour's time of recording, because we had only 15 minutes to record and do whatever. Once they bumped it up to an hour, that was like my ticket to start doing YouTube. And I was doing YouTube when I was in Heaven's Ward. I think after the changes to the script system where it was like time gated, once they took that off, then I was like, okay, now it's my time to start doing what I always wanted to do, because I used to watch, like I said, Mr. Happy. I used to watch Ethos, which was our lore guy at the time. I used to watch the OG crafter of Final Fantasy XIV, Mifri, and they were the people that got me into wanting to do this, because I see how they help their communities, and it's like, I want to do that too. I want to help people. I don't want to be just another player. I wanted to be a part of the community that helps other players. So basically, that is my history of how I got into Final Fantasy XIV and basically gaming altogether.
Nice. Let's take it back a little bit, and go back to. So, what was the first console that you owned?
That would be the very first Nintendo.
Did you steal your friend's Super Mario RPG to play on it?
No, I actually got one. I think my mother bought it for me for Christmas, I believe.
Have you played the remaster?
Yes, I beat it except for the Final Fantasy boss that came back, and I was like, yeah, I'm not gonna test my my skill on this. I beat the game. I beat him the first time. I'm happy with it.
What about like how do you feel it compared to the original? Like, did it hit those nostalgia vibes?
Immediately, the graphics and everything was just like so much better. I really enjoyed the added to the ultimate attacks that they have for each party group. I thought that was great. I think they did a very good service of bringing it back and just making it a little bit more replayable.
So you said the first Final Fantasy game you tried was 9. It didn't appeal to you, but you then moved on to 8. Was that the first one that you owned as well?
Yes, absolutely.
And did you ever consider going back to play 7 after 8?
I did, but I didn't play 7. I went back and tried the earlier ones. I think I had a copy of the anthology.
Yep.
And I played through it, but
I've literally just picked up a copy of Anthology today.
I do remember playing through it, getting so confused in the sands with the sand maze, and never really completed it. But I did dabble in other games. I tried 7, got to the gold saucer, and I was like, this is not for me, and I just never went back to the old ones. I tried playing all the pixel remaster ones, but it's like I played it, and then it's like I fell off. The old ones just didn't last for me.
Yeah, some people struggle going back to play older games. I can as well. Depends on the game and the series. How did you feel the series as a whole progressed when it moved to like the PlayStation 2 and they introduced like voice acting in Final Fantasy X? How do you feel it like elevated the game series as a whole?
Well, I definitely like the fact that I didn't have to read all the time. I love that they kept the turn-based, definitely. Going from the ATB gauge to based on your agility in Final Fantasy X, I thought that was pretty cool that you can see who goes next so you can plan out your strategies and all that. And I really definitely enjoyed 10 because I was in high school when Final Fantasy X came out. And I remember I had a couple of people that I would talk to about how a pain in the butt Unalesca was, being like always zombifying you and all that. Yep. And it was a good time. And I'm still playing 10 now, but it's like I'm just trying to do the sphere grid trophy.
Yep.
And it's like right now I'm just trying to grind out getting the spheres to get the empty ones filled so I can get that done. And it's just like it's a grind doing the monster arena to get those.
Yeah. So a funny story about 10 for myself is I was playing it pretty much when it was released, and I got all the way pretty much to what I thought was right at the end at the time, climbing up to Zanarkand, and then my memory card got wiped and I hadn't touched it since the remake came out, and I was going for all the ultimate weapons, and I got them all apart from Tidus, however you want to pronounce it, his one with the bloody chocobo thing that you had to do on the plains.
That can die in a fire.
I gave up. It was infuriating, and I just said, "Fuck it! I'm gonna go kill Sin and be done with this game. I'm done."
The ones that gave me the worst problem was the butterfly one, Tidus, and then of course the lightning bolt. I didn't even bother with that back in the day.
I found that easier than the chocobo race. Well, speaking of like frustrating things, other than your initial problems with Garuda, what other like instances or duties have you found personally to be difficult, like at the time of release?
God, the only one that comes to mind was Wondrous Palace, because Paladin. I was a Paladin because for 14 I played Dragon Age, so I was used to the shield and sword. So when I saw Gladiator, that's the first thing that came to my mind. Didn't know what a tank was. So when I got to Wondrous Palace, I just couldn't keep aggro. Flash was horrible. The Circle of Scorn was the only AoE that we basically had because we didn't have Eclipse at the time. And I gave up. I told them, I'm sorry to the party, I can't do this. And I quit playing Paladin immediately. But the good thing was I found my love in Dragoon and Warrior.
Yes.
So Wondrous Palace was the catalyst of getting myself off of Paladin. Other than that, I can't really think of any dungeon that really gave me an issue.
Just from I've played a lot of MMOs prior to 14. I played Final Fantasy XI, I played World of Warcraft, played Dungeons and Dragons Online, and a load of free ones. You know, like the old anime MMOs that used to come out for free, like Ragnarok and all that sort of stuff. But the biggest challenge that I found early on was Titan, and not even Titan Hard or Titan X, just bog standard Titan. It seems so pathetic looking back now, like how much we struggled with that. And I think more recently, one I get a lot in roulettes, and I don't know if you do roulettes and have the same experience, but whenever I land as a tank in Tsukiyomi, I just want to F4.
The only that's like I never really had a problem doing like in trial roulette, but I do know that on Tsukiyomi I switched off to Samurai, and that's how I knew I loved Samurai. Is because I tried it out because Dragoon's jumps sucked so bad during Extreme. Trying to do Dark Blade and Bright Blade were impossible. So after that, I switched over to Samurai. Fell in love with Samurai, and after that, I played the main story on Dragoon, and then switch off and play on Samurai because it was so much easier to play.
Yeah, so my Final Fantasy journey in terms of jobs by expansion, Realm Reborn and Heaven's Sword were Monk. Then I went to Dark Knight, then Gunbreaker, and then back to the Dark Knight. I'm still slacking on leveling everything else up, but I've decided this is the expansion that I'm gonna max everything. I don't care how long it takes.
Yeah, nowadays it's not really hard. Just like do your front lines, do your roulettes, do the beast tribes or the societal tribes you want to call them now, the Arcas de Dara, then the Pixies, and in the future, in like the next month, we'll be doing the Pelo Pelo. Basically, do a challenge log if that's available, and that's after that. It's like just run whatever dungeon you need a triple tryhard card for.
Yep. So just moving on from general Final Fantasy now, into how you got started with your content creation. You said you watched, creators like Mr. Happy and the original crafting guides. What made you decide that like you could add value to YouTube and guides? Like, what made you think like I can do this and people are really going to benefit from this? Because they really do. Like I've followed a lot of your guild guides and your crafting guides, but what made you decide to take the jump?
Well, like I said earlier, it was like a lot of people, like the comment section in those people's YouTube videos, always like they get good advice and they're so happy and grateful, and it's just like I want to have that feeling that I'm helping, you know. And it's like I feel watching these people make their videos, it's like I just feel like they need a different perspective because what I hear is basically echoed from basically all the other crafting YouTubers. They say the same thing, they use the same websites, and they don't really use their own brain to come up with different strategies and different rotations for certain things. Like when the Maker's Mark rotation came out, we're like doing like 50 long steps, and it's just like it's just so many ways that you guys can do things. And it's like I wanted to bring a different perspective to crafting that most people just don't want to do because they just want to just copy and paste whatever else is doing or whatever they find on back then was the Ariala links, but now it's Teamcraft and stuff like that. And it's like sometimes you just need to use your own brain, not rely on other people or software to get stuff done. And that's why I thought that I would bring to the Final Fantasy XIV community something different.
So when you started, was it just the crafting guides to start off with?
At the time, yes, it was basically make what I know, even though most of it was obsolete and it was removed, like the favor system for gatherers. Like I had one person say that you're doing a video on favors because it's the only thing that we had at the time to make content on besides rotations on whatever the current gear was. I think it was just the basic blue gear that was implemented in Heaven's Ward. But other than that, I was like thinking of other things that I can make videos about, like script farming and stuff like that. And then I had to branch out of that because eventually I ran out of crafting and gathering content, so I moved on to guild videos and stuff like that, and always try to branch out even further and further. And then as we get stronger, I ended up finding content and doing solo videos, like how solo this dungeon or this primal or that primal. And of course Ethis at the time was doing that, and that gave me the spark to branch out besides doing crafting and gathering. But it was really tough coming up with ideas because I was doing one and then skipping the next day, then doing one and skipping the next day. I was trying to do like 3 videos a week at the time while also working my real-time job at the same time.
Speaking of the journey that you've had, what have been the biggest hurdles that you've had in growing your channel and just keeping the momentum going yourself to keep making videos?
One was the audio. I was not using a mic.
Audio.
I was not using a real mic. I was using I think a headset that worked pretty well, but a lot of people were complaining about, lip smacking and all that stuff like that. So it took me a while to finally invest in a actual microphone. And so the audio was number one. And I think trying to find a good intro, how to start the videos was definitely something that I struggle with a lot. But I can definitely say a lot of YouTubers kind of gave me an idea of how I want to start my videos. So those are the two things that really were the hard part of starting. And then of course finding the confidence in talking in a microphone and stuff like that. So that was probably the beginning of how hard it was to start out. And of course the editing part was not hard because the PlayStation had its own share factory where you can edit all that stuff, but it's like you didn't have the noise canceling software that usually you have with an actual PC or computer. So I basically had to, because I live on the main road and my room faces the street, if someone drives by my house, that audio gets into my videos.
Yeah.
And it's so annoying you have to repeat yourself over and over and over again or try to hurry up before somebody goes by my house.
Yeah. I had a very similar problem with one of the last videos that I recorded. I ended up getting so frustrated. I literally ended up recording literally 3 sentences at once, stopping and then just piecing them together.
Yep.
Because I live above a business and it can get quite noisy. So I've also faced similar issues with that.
So it's I always try to tell myself, do it in segments. Talk what you want to talk about, stop the recording, listen back to it if you have to redo it again, and then start the next part. And I always try to get everything out really quickly and do it all in one take instead of segmenting. It's I always have a problem. Take it slow, segment it, and then start the next part just in case you have to, redo it again. So that's always a problem I always had.
Speaking of advice for you've just given yourself and the other content creators, what would you give as 3 key pieces of advice to people that want to start creating content for gaming or specifically Final Fantasy XIV?
1, get a mic. Don't use headset mics. Get a good mic, number 1. I started out with the Blue Yeti after doing a little bit of research. So that was definitely the first thing I went with. Number 2, you don't really need nothing more than just a PlayStation. Because everything inside of it will help you with streaming and all that. You don't really need a camera if you don't want to be on one. And if you are going to be doing video editing, most likely try to get something that's affordable. I'm pretty sure there are free websites you can use to do free editing. and stuff like that. But besides equipment, definitely talk about what you're passionate about, and you will find people that will be in the same boat as you, and just trial and error. You know, you're gonna get people that are gonna be like, well, this sounds not so good, so there's like constructive criticism that you can take and you can improve on that. And sometimes you just have to ignore the assholes out there, like I have to do most of the time, and you just gotta, you know, keep going. Sometimes you'll have that imposter syndrome, which I rarely have, but sometimes you will get it. But you have to know that that won't last. You will get over it. You just have to keep doing it, keep trying. Don't look at the numbers. I can't tell you how many times people tell me don't focus on the numbers because that will take you down.
Yeah.
That's basically my general advice.
Been there, done that. It took me quite a while to learn to stop looking at metrics like that and just put content out that I enjoyed putting out, because that's the reason I started it in the first place. So just taking a brief step away from your content, going back to Final Fantasy, you spoke briefly about talking through your different expansions. What is your... We'll just start off with, what was your most memorable experience in the game, whether it's an interaction with another player or a particular story, whatever. Just what sticks out in your mind the most as being the most memorable thing you've had in this game?
I probably can do it expansion by expansion.
Oh, nice.
So, in A Realm Reborn, probably my biggest memory was solo tanking Titan Extreme. And I never have done an Extreme as a main tank. And the group that I had was so impressed because I timed warriors in Vuln perfectly with Mountain Buster at like 3 stacks of the Vuln up. And I remember doing that like all the time, always knowing exactly when to use the home galling ability. Which, by the way, that's another thing. A lot of people call it home gang. A lot of the times it's mispronounced. It's home gong, despite the fact that it looks like it's gang. But if you look it up, it's actually home gong. That's one of the gripes I have when people say that. But in Realm Reborn, it was solo main tanking Titan Extreme. The other thing was doing the binding coil as a first timer on Dragoon. I had no idea what the hell I was doing. And that was at the door boss, the ADS. After that, I was just like, I never tried doing it again until it was probably at the end of Realm Reborn. So those are the two memories that I had in ARR. And besides being locked out of my account back in the 0.3 patch, that was because I was having some kind of suspicious activity with my account. So I guess somebody was trying to get into it and I was locked out. And this is when I had 2 different emails. The first one where I had the account which I got locked out of. So I had to get them to switch over to my main email account to get myself back into 14. So those are probably my 3 memorable moments in A Realm Reborn.
Okay, so moving on to Heavensward.
Heavensward, there's only one point in the story that really hit me, because I love dragons, was the 0.3 patch with Nidhogg. I empathize with Nidhogg more than any other character in Heavensward, because him losing his sister from basically being betrayed, I kind of know what it feels like to be betrayed by people you thought you can trust. So I empathize with Nidhogg, and I literally was crying the fact that he died at the end of 3.3. So that was pretty much like the only memorable part of the Heavensward expansion, was when we had to kill Nidhogg.
Yeah.
And of course, Haurchefant and Yaziel coming back to help you take out the eyes. And of course, Astidian. I love Astidian from doing the Dragoon story and going into Heavensward as a Dragoon. So we got that special dialogue with him, made it even more special. So that was my Heavensward moment.
What about moving on to Stormblood, when we got the reveal that Yida wasn't Yida?
That was surprising. I give it that. I was a little bit shocked that wasn't really her. But Stormblood, oh my god, that's when things kind of went downhill, personally and story-wise. So the one thing that people don't know about me is that I wear dentures because I was born with a disease that's genetic, where basically when I was born, my teeth came in as a baby, they didn't have that protective coating over it, the enamel. So I was going through my life dealing with dental issues a lot. And right before Stormblood launched in March, I had the last 3 teeth that I had left taken out from gum disease. So going into Stormblood, I was afraid that that was going to affect my content, even though I was already, I already had a partial for the top. I was already used to having, fake teeth, but I was afraid that it was going to affect me more because it's all fake. But eventually, I found out that it really didn't make a difference. So going into Stormblood was really unknown. But as we got into Stormblood, that didn't become a problem. But the story, I had the biggest problem with the story. It was so disjointed between the Alamegan side and then, of course, the Dolmen side, on top of Ralbon Extreme. And I took my vacation for early access, and I wasted it because we couldn't do anything. I spent my whole vacation just trying to get through whatever the instance was, best served cold, whatever it was called.
Yeah.
And that I was really pissed off that I wasted my vacation on that
one
because
instance. Yeah,
exactly. I was just like, and I had to craft and gather way too early because I always go to the main story before I start crafting and gathering. And it's like I had to craft and gather because there was nothing else I can do. Everything was just so messed up with the servers, and just nobody can do anything.
Yeah, so what about moving into probably what is quite a lot of people's favorites in terms of story, at least, Shadowbringers?
So Shadowbringers, the thing with Shadowbringers is I hated the fact that we were taking away from the source and going to a new world. Because I wanted to go to Meracidia, I wanted to go to Garlemald and all that.
Yep.
So I was a little bit ticked off about that, but in Shadowbringers, it kind of got ruined for me because my mother died the February before Shadowbringers came out. So when the music hit, it was hard for me to listen to because all I thought about was my mother at the time. And so the whole expansion was like a really emotional roller coaster for me for that whole entire expansion. But I would have to say that it was one of the expansions where I guess, blew up on YouTube a little bit more than usual. I think I was around 15,000 subscribers at the time, which was one of my goals. But I definitely enjoyed the expansion. The story was phenomenal. And I think the only part that really made my jaw drop was when Emmett Selk revealed himself as Hades. I was like, literally, my jaw just went immediately dropped when he revealed that. I was just like, wow. I did not see that coming. And you would think the sigil was a giveaway. I was like, it didn't even occur to me. Because I played Final Fantasy XII.
Yeah.
And then the Hades in that fight, I think the sigil, when you kill him, it was the same thing. And it's like, it just didn't occur to me that was a reference to Final Fantasy XII's Esper.
Yes, they lifted a lot of them from Final Fantasy XII. Also, speaking of Final Fantasy XII, that's also the expansion we got Viera as a playable race.
Yep.
And the Hrothgar, which were obviously based off the Ronso from Final Fantasy X, which I believe were the first new races to be introduced since the start of the game.
We have, don't forget the All Ra.
We had the All Ra as well. Yeah.
Speaking of All Ra, funniest thing is I never switched off of All Ra on my main since Heaven's Ward. The minute I saw they were kind of like dragon-esque, I was like, that's it. That is my race that I want to be for the rest of the game.
I think I have been most races at this point, with the exception of Elven.
Funny enough, I've been all of them myself when I had the 5 free Fantasias.
Yep.
I was a Hura. Then I went to Elzen, tried Lalafell, and then stuck with Makote until Al Ra came out. And then on my alts, I had a Bunny and then a Hrothgar alt all.
What about Endwalker? The conclusion to our Heidelin Zodiac arc of the story.
So for Endwalker, at this time in my life, I was, I believe, I was already gone from my my job that I had, and then I started helping with my grandmother, who unfortunately passed away this past February. She was dealing with mental issues, and my aunt was taking care of her. So I was basically went from working at a grocery store to basically caretaking with her. So during Endwalker, I was working with her. So Endwalker was a different story. I wasn't as emotional as was in Shadowbringers until the very end.
Yeah.
Of course, at the beginning, when we meet Vanat on the boat, a little bit tear jerking because of the music. And when we saw the trailer for Endwalker, and then we got to the end, it's like I realized it's from the music from Ultima Thule was from the trailer. And it's like it didn't occur to me until the music started playing, or when I looked back at the trailer years later. It's like, oh, that's right, that was from the beginning of the Endwalker expansion. But when we, I think it was Elpis. When we went to Elpis, that was like my oh my god moment. I was like, wow, this is what they were trying to hide in the live letters from for Endwalker, and also was a little bit upset when Yoshi P had to delay to put the Emmett part at the end, where he kind of gives us the 10-year span. I was a little bit upset when it was like, because we were like right there in November. It's like, oh, we're gonna go back to December because we need to put this part in. I was a little bit upset about that, but I was like, yeah, I can wait a month for that. But
Yeah.
when we got to Ultima Thule, that was the hardest part for me because when Graha, sacrificed himself, we had the Shadowbringers music playing, which ultimately broke me down. But then when we heard Close in the Distance after that, that made me like an emotional wreck at that point. And the worst part of it was that I had to go with my grandmother and my aunt to the hospital for my grandmother's doctor's appointment. And I was like, how am I supposed to go after I just had an emotional breakdown after Graha sacrificing himself? Not to mention, I had to come back and sit in a 1,000-person queue just to get back in to save Graha again.
Yeah, queues are their own boss.
And then the walk up to Medion also broke me because I think of all the people that were basically talking to us, Midgard Solmer hit me the hardest because I took that so personal because for how I started from Realm Reborn, going through everything that I went through in life, he spoke to me like I felt like he was speaking to me directly, like saying that you have gone through so much hell that you are a very strong person inside and out. And so that was the other part that really struck with me the hardest of Endwalker.
This is something I don't know if a lot of people know, but the vocalist for Close in the Distance is sung by Jason Charles Miller, who is the original voice actor for Rauban in A Realm Reborn. Don't know if you knew that, but I found that quite interesting.
Huh, now I gotta go back and look up cutscenes from the Realm Reborn.
So moving on to Dawn Trail, quite a mixed reception with this expansion. Me personally, I think reading a lot of the comments, taking all the basing it just on the game rather than who's playing what, because I know there was some hate towards the Wook Lamat voice actor, which is just not warranted in any way, shape, or form. I found the expansion to be quite refreshing, not being the main character.
Right.
It's nice to have a step back, and I'm obviously going to be building up to a new story, but it's nice to wind it like all the way back to the beginning. Like we're dealing with problems that our character was dealing with on a similar level in A Realm Reborn. We're not going and fighting. Well, we were, but we're not fighting gods. We're not fighting anything like too cataclysmic. It's just basic fights, and I think it's really good from the point of view they're now going to be able to build the story up again. But like a lot of people were complaining that they feel like Wouk didn't do so good as the main character. I disagree with that. So what are your opinions on the new story?
Well, as someone who can definitely emphasize with, or someone who's very empathetic, I understand how Wouk was, how she wasn't very confident in herself. I've been through that. And I thought she was very well represented. When it comes to people like that, you have to remember that she can't be like us. She can't be like this confident hero. She will have flaws, and then she will grow as she gets, acclimated with her new role as the Dawn Servant and all that. As for the problems with her being captured all the time, I understand that does get tiresome. It's like how many times can you get captured by one person? So I do understand that can be a little bit frustrating, but it's like you have to give her time to grow. You can't just like, oh, I hate her already. It's like you have like one expansion with her. It's like you have to give her time to grow as a character.
Technically, it's not even one expansion, is it? It's just one patch.
Right.
I think my only...
Look at Minfilia. She sucked. Minfilia was like, sucked so bad, but look how she turned out.
Yes. They return to the waking sands.
The long way, not the Aether ticket. You have to go, although they had to go the long way.
Yeah. So I think my only complaint in terms of story of Dawn Trail is, and they might do in future patches, probably because the story hasn't finished yet, but I wish they made Cryo more prominent in this initial story, because they were playing into it so much in the pre-patches, and then she just became another side character, and it's a little bit infuriating.
Yeah, like she gets overshadowed by even the freaking baby. Zerulja's baby gets like move over. I can open the gate.
Yeah. So we have another limited job coming in. Beastmaster. How do you feel about limited jobs? Because both of them, I know they've existed before, but these iterations are very close to the Final Fantasy XI ones, from what I can gather. And being a very, very, very long time Final Fantasy XI player, seeing these iterations is, at least a Blue Mage, was very disappointing. I'm really hoping Beastmaster doesn't go the same way. How do you feel about it? Is it something you're going to try, or do you just sort of ignore the limited time jobs?
Well, Blue Mage definitely for me was one of the greatest additions to Final Fantasy XIV, because it opened up so many different avenues of gil-making. I was the first person to make the guide on how to do the Orman Veil synced with Blue Mage to make all that gil. And of course somebody made theirs like a couple of hours after mine. So I was lucky that I was able to get mine out before that. But Blue Mage, like I said, opened up so many avenues to grind and farm things that would ultimately be slower with regular jobs. And the one thing I don't like with Blue Mage was the Morbo mount. I don't like that they hid that mount behind Blue Mage. I don't like that they made too much content with Blue Mage with other players. I wanted it more to be more solo. The Carnival is great, but it's still not great, because all you're doing is getting poetics and allied seals for Aetheryte tickets. But other than that, the Carnival is just there for resources. But I really want them to do more with Blue Mage. And with Beastmaster, I'm glad that it's a limited job, because now they can take Beastmaster and do something different. Because if they made the jobs just like regular jobs in 14, then it's basically the same thing we're doing now. Taking into dungeons and not really making anything innovative. We're just doing the same thing with just these jobs. So calling them limited and making them having their own content definitely gives it something different to 14, gives it variety instead of doing just the regular stuff that we're doing now. So when Beastmaster comes out, I'm hoping that they make it somewhat like Pokemon, where you can just like they give us like a certain amount of enemies to capture, but hopefully that when we get side content with Beastmaster, it is like Pokemon-esque type content or something completely different.
So I can't remember the name of it for the life of me, but there was Pokemon, for lack of a better term, in Final Fantasy XI. It came out in the Treasures of Arturgan expansion. You literally went and captured monsters on slates or something, and then you could battle them. I didn't get round to doing much of it because I was just too invested in the story. But I could certainly see how they can put that in with Beastmaster. Maybe not PvP.
God, no.
That could be another balance issue. Just jumping back quickly to what you said about Blue Mage and making Gil. Is it still viable? Do you know of anything that is viable with it to use it at this current state of the game?
When it comes to Gil from Dungeons, they stopped it after Heaven's Ward. So even if you go in synced and Stormborn after that, the mob stopped dropping Gil. So unfortunately for that part, it stops at the vault. There's no other dungeons I can think about that is better than running the vault up to the first boss. For running dungeons, like unsynced for loot, to going into your Grand Company, definitely makes it a lot faster because you got Ultra Vibration and then you have Ram's Voice to basically kill some mod packs, but that is still probably not as fast as regular jobs because regular jobs can be stronger than Blue Mage.
Yeah.
And you can basically pull more with regular jobs. But for Blue Mage, like the guild opportunities do get limited because the job is limited to certain levels every single time they upgrade it. So it doesn't get any stronger without the devs' help. With other jobs, you can just go out to the market board or wait for the next Tuesday for your heliometry tombstone to regenerate so you get more better gear to go do things even faster. Because right now on my samurai, I'm just basically doing Alexander and the Phantom Train to get my tokens for Grand Company seals for the duck bones that I sell to a vendor.
So segueing from that into like the market board and the economy, you just mentioned about Grand Company turn-ins. What items would you recommend buying? Obviously, it varies server to server, market to market, but which ones do you find are the best ones to invest in per se to resell on the market board?
Well, if you're just like in your head, you know what is valuable. So in this case, think of the Heaven's Ward relic. You have the blessed arrows, you have the Francesca, you have the Better Crown Pie or the Moogle pies, and I forgot what the last one was. You can buy them and you can sell them on the market board for people who are doing the Heaven's Ward relic. In theory, it's a good idea to sell, but most people are doing that, and most of them are bots, RMT players, or people who buy the Gil. And it's like, you think it's a good idea, but when you're putting it into motion, you realize it's not a great idea, despite the fact that, people still need them. People can just easily get them off your Grand Company instead of the market board, so in that case, that's not a very good idea. When it comes to your Grand Company, the best thing to do is, of course, the items that were used in A Realm Reborn to upgrade your main hand tool. You put them in the Grand Company. I think it was in Heaven's Ward. I don't remember when, but they sell for 360 gil a piece. And if you have your Free Company buff or the Squadron manuals, you can get more Grand Company seals per turn-in. But of course, only the body piece and the legs and the weapons don't benefit from turning them in because the gil that you get is more than you get from the Grand Company turn-ins. So when you're talking about market board versus non-market board, the duck bones and all the ones that sell for 360 gil will always be a better option if you're trying to make gil. If you're going for something on the market board, your best bet is the coke and the hardened sap because they are used in submarines and airships. And people are always making those to sell outright. Even though that they're pretty slow, sometimes you will get people who want to start their own fleet. They'll most likely just bypass all the hard work and just buy the final product off the market board. But when it comes to other things, it is determined strictly based on what is needed. So like right now, we're in between the lull of 0.0 and 0.1. A lot of the players aren't playing right now. So a lot of the battle materia has spiked since then because all those people are not playing the game right now. So you can tell that because the trains are getting harder and harder to kill the A ranks. So you know that the materia prices are going to go up because all those people are undercutting like crazy. And funny enough, I actually just had my guild guide going live in about 4 minutes. That is going to showcase how much materia has grown since 7.0. So it definitely determines how many people are playing, how many aren't playing, and what is needed. Because in 7.1, we all know that we're getting grades to the tombstone gear and crafted. Crafted can be overmelded when it's augmented. So we know that grade 11 is not useful. So you know that grade 12 is, so you know to stock up on that and then of course sell grade 12 more than anything else.
So what led you going from your crafting guides into your guild guides? Everyone's looking for a get rich quick, everyone's looking for easy gil, and that type of video will always generate a lot of views, a lot of engagement.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the videos that I have found from trying to get back into the game, trying to find out information to help myself get into the current market, they all say pretty much the same thing, and it's either buy this, and this, but I can't guarantee it because I'm not on your server. And they're very unique items. They're not like they're like specific to that server that you're probably not going to find on any other server, or they're the generic ones where like go and buy the level 1 weapons and sell them on the market board. Yours, on the other hand, seem to be a bit more in-depth and tailored to the market as a whole, not specifically to your server as such, but they follow general market patterns. How do you go about finding what can sell and what doesn't? What is your method behind it?
Well, most of it is looking at the sales history, number one. Number two, trial and error. Well, some people are telling me, I try it, it doesn't work. So trial and error for the most part. The one thing that I feel people don't understand is that undercutting doesn't always make things sell faster. Because if someone doesn't want it, then it's not going to sell. People need to want it in order for it to be sold. So you can have, I don't know, battle material on the market board, but if no one wants it, it's not going to sell, despite the fact if you're undercut it by 1,000 gil, yeah, it's you think it's enticing, but like I said, no one wants it, no one's going to buy it. Another thing is that sometimes people get too greedy and too impatient. You can't be greedy and you can't be impatient because those are the two enemies of selling stuff on the market board and trying to make gil. 99% of the time, you don't need it. You want it, but you don't need it, and people just don't understand that concept. And that drives me up the wall of anything else. Is my pet peeve when people just don't want to be patient.
So have you found it a few times when you find something that doesn't necessarily sell quickly but sells reliably, and then suddenly everyone else seems to find it at the same time, and instead of like matching your price, it just gets undercut and undercut and undercut to make it worthless?
Right.
Because
at that point, you should just take it off the market board.
Yep. Like,
because that's what I had to do sometimes with the materia. Doesn't sell, take it off, re-put it back up, go to bed, I wake up, it's all sold. Because most of the time, I also have to take in effect nighttime people. Sometimes people play like in like wee hours in the morning.
Yeah.
So what might not sell during the day will sell at night because there's different people playing.
Yeah. So if I find something that's selling reasonably well, reasonably quick, I will match the lowest price. Is that something you do, or do you like undercut a tiny bit?
I always undercut by 1 gil, but I also take the quantity that they're selling into account as well. So if someone's selling 99 of something that's really needed, you also have to look at the recipe. Okay, so take the Turali corn oil, for instance. You need 6 to make 3 oil. So selling something in stacks of 99 is smart because you need a lot to make a lot of oil. But the other case is sometimes people don't want 99. Maybe they just want a couple here to make one item and then they'll move on to something else. Then you have to take into the effect that you don't really have to always put 90 stacks of 99. Maybe you just want to put maybe like 20, 30, 40, or even 50. So not everybody wants, stacks of 99. So you have to adjust based on what people want. Again, looking at the sales histories, when you're trying to sell something that's not 99, then you look at the list of items that people are selling it for. If someone is, so in this case, if the lowest is like quantity of 50, 60, then 70 and 80, but you want to sell 99, find the 99 on the market board and undercut the person who is selling the 99 by 1 gil. Anything below that, then you go and undercut that by the lowest and just walk away from the market board.
Yes. Typically, I find that the people selling on bulk will undercut like the people selling stacks 10, 20, 30 so much. Are there any other patterns or anything that you should watch out for that like is a mark of like botters or RMTs that you should like avoid those items for the moment?
Immediate undercutting. If someone's immediately undercutting you, most likely they are using some kind of cheat that's going to basically undercut you immediately. Number 2, if they're selling a lot, like I'm talking about like 20 hits because that's how many your retainer can hold. If they're selling 20 of one item, either they're an RMT or a bot or someone that's really, really bad. But if you see multiple times of people selling like 10, 20 hits at one time, at that point, you're probably best finding something else. Or waiting for someone else to buy them all out. Or if they're cheap enough, you buy them all out and then put them back on the market board at a higher price. But that's definitely something to look out for if you're selling on the market board. And if that happens, like I said, just take it off and try something else or try a different time of day.
Yeah, so I've had that problem and been that problem myself in terms of the selling like 20 in one, but the items I've tended to sold like 20 in a hit are things like loft pieces when the housing lottery is about to end, because I know they're going to shift. Funny thing about the automatic undercuts, when I've noticed that it's been instant, I've often dropped my price radically and then bought it out. Just because it makes me feel slightly better.
I've done that once with the Eureka, the Hydado's horn. This person would not stop undercutting me. So you know what? Because I don't care, because I didn't care at the time, I undercutted. I think it went down to 3 million, I think, and the person followed me. Every single time I undercutted, they would follow me, and to the point where I finally sold mine. So at the point, you will become a little bit spiteful at one point, but if you don't really care, then it's not really a big deal. So 2.8 million, because I'm actually in the game right now. So I sold mine at 2.8 million, and the person stopped undercutting me after that. So you can easily tell when their limit is because they will stop undercutting you. Like if a couple of hours and they don't undercut you, then they reached their limit. And then if you really want to stick it to them, withdraw your item and then wait for theirs to sell, then put yours back on.
Yep.
So I've done that a couple of times. I got, you know what? You want to be a spiteful bitch? So will I.
Yeah, been guilty of that myself when I can't remember what the item was, but I found a very nice niche that no one else was using at the time. And then it got flooded and people kept on undercutting, and I ended up intentionally selling at a loss just to tank the entire market even further, just because I was that annoyed.
Well, it's gonna like everything does recover eventually.
Yeah, but that was me doing one of your pet peeves and being a little bit impatient. So just keeping on with the market board theme at the moment, I know a few people listening now are in the process of either saving up for a house or furniture. And aside from is it 1 million gil the game gives you at like level 30 or something? That is the most amount of gil that most people will get in any one time. What is the best way to go about investing that gil in the market board to turn about a profit?
Well, here's the thing is, when it comes to making gil, I almost never use my own gil to make more gil. I usually would find other avenues that doesn't involve me spending my money. But those people who want to spend to make more, I always find selling stuff that people need to level up, like the Grand Company turn-ins, or leaf quests, or even shards and crystals. A lot of people do always need those things to get started. So if you had to spend money to make more, definitely would invest in things that people need to basically level up and grow fat.
Right. So
But I definitely would say try to find non-market board ways to make the gil if you're trying to mass a lot of a profit, because the market board, it's like if you're not selling something that sells like 30, 40, 50,000 gil consistently, it's just like you can just go to the main store and get rich faster.
yeah, I started. So I the game back in, I want to say, February of this year. I came back from a break. I didn't have very much skill at the end of the last expansion. I think I was down to like 3 mil, and I escalated that very quickly by watching your videos, and I found that my server is the most expensive server on the data center. So I jumped to all the other servers, bought out the items that you'd recommended, and just sold them for a higher price on my server.
Yep, I have a friend in the Discord that does that too. He goes to the other servers on whatever data center Goblin's on, and he just goes to other servers and just pulls everything back to his and basically flips everything. I try, it's like I said, I always try doing that, but it's just like it never ends up turning out that way. So that's why I never looked at flipping seriously.
Well, I think I've peaked at the moment. It's taken me a while, and obviously there'd be other ways to do it. And I've spent a lot of money on minions and mounts at this time, but I'm sitting at a happy 60 million at the moment from that 3 million just on flipping. So I'm quite happy at the moment. Going back to, you just mentioned your friend in the Discord does that. How important have you found it in your content creation journey, interacting with your viewers, watchers, commenters? Have they given you any ideas? Have you stopped any type of content because of like positive, constructive comments? Not like the negative ones, but if you see what I mean.
I kind of want to break that up into smaller.
Break it up as much as you want.
All right. What was the first thing you said? Because I have a bad short-term memory.
No, don't worry about it. So, how important? We'll start like the beginning of what would have been your journey. How important and how receptive were your like viewers and commenters to giving you feedback and then hearing back from you? How did that start to shape your content?
Well, like I said, the first thing people complained about was the audio. It was so bad. So in a positive way, that definitely helped me. And I think that majority of my growth was not my majority of my growth was not very good because my audio was just horrible. So that was probably the best piece of feedback that I've gotten through a lot of people was to upgrade and get a professional microphone. And there's also some constructive criticism about sometimes people tend to say you kind of like ramble on too much, and which can say I do kind of ramble on a couple of times, but it's like I only ramble because I feel like it's necessary to get the information out to the point where people understand it. It doesn't matter how long it takes for me to get that out, as long as people understand what I'm trying to say. You know, some people consider that rambling, but I consider it trying to help as much as possible to clear up what I'm trying to explain.
Yeah, and everyone understands things at a different point, so it's definitely not a bad thing. I found that having a visual aid on the video also helps, like if it's relevant, like an infogram, or like if it's a particular item, like having the item on screen as well. Because obviously some people learn visually, some people learn by hearing, some people learn by doing. So I'm gonna disagree with those comments made by your viewers there. I don't think it's a bad thing that you ramble on, because it will then mean everyone is going to learn the point you're trying to convey.
Right. And that's something that I learned from Mifri himself, because he had that same thing. He goes, doesn't matter how long it takes me to explain something, as long as people understand what I'm saying, that's the most important thing. Because I actually had a comment saying that, get to the point. And that was on my Duckbone video. It's just like, I'm sorry that I had to explain everything you know, the process of everything. It's like, I can't just get right to the point.
Yeah.
Because then some people would complain like, well, I don't understand this method because you just didn't explain it quite well enough.
You can guarantee that the person that commented to get to the point would have been confused if you got straight to the point.
Right. And people forget there is a B button on the videos. You can speed it up to like 1.5%. Like,
yeah,
speed up the video if you need it.
If I'm looking for information in a video and like either I need it quickly, or at that time I don't have the patience to sit through the video, I'll tend to, you know, like if you hover over the time bar, it will show you like the spikes of like the most watched content. I normally just start clicking on them. How soon after starting your content creation on YouTube did people start like reaching out and being like, hey man, really appreciate this, I didn't like find this information anywhere, this is really good? How quickly did that come about for you and like give you the motivation and the passion to like know that, yeah, I'm doing something people really appreciate?
I kind of want to say almost immediately, but as the content, the harder content, like 2-star, 3-star, and 4-star comes about, then that's where a lot of the people start coming out. It's like, oh, this is something I've been looking for. You explain it so much better. This is so much easier. It's more convenient. Or it's like I couldn't find this piece of information, and I came to you, and you'd like immediately solved all my problems. So it's like almost like immediate. I started getting those comments saying thank you and all that.
And obviously, as your content journey has progressed, obviously it's not the sole focus of your content, but your Patreon is pretty much set up exclusively for like the gil-making side of it. Did you get asked to set up a Patreon? Is that something you thought you'd set up to like give like an extra bonus to the supporters that wanted to support you financially? How did that come about? At which point in your journey did you go, this would be a good idea?
COVID was the reason why I started a Patreon, because as they say, don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Yep.
So I had YouTube, I had my monetization, and then I had Patreon, and because I wasn't sure if I was going to get enough ad revenue to survive, so I figured create a Patreon, and the one thing that I know most of in Final Fantasy XIV is gil-making. So it's like, well, if I give them early access a day early for my videos, and then a weeks or maybe sometimes 2 weeks early on the list of things to sell as I do it, I figured that would be a good idea to make a little bit extra money just to offset in case I have a bad month on YouTube. And that's where the whole Patreon thing came into play.
So going forward, we're about to start hitting 7.1. Through the rest of the 7 series and the rest of this expansion, what sort of, other than following like the same sort of pattern you would follow for an expansion, have you got any particular content you're looking forward to doing? Any different content we can expect?
Cosmic Exploration number 1, the new exploration zone that we're getting, the Bermuda Triangle of Final Fantasy XIV. When it comes to harder content like chaotic 24-man raid, probably not my forte when it comes to that. Beastmaster, definitely. More Blue Mage content when that comes out. Definitely going to be doing more of that. And whatever else Square Enix decides to come out of the blue with, I don't really know what they're planning. They said keep your expectations high. So I'm definitely looking forward to what they add in that we don't know about. And other than that, I can't really think. I do want to do like just general beginner's guides on some of the jobs that I play and I know personally. I definitely want to get back into that. Definitely want to start getting back into doing the Aether Current guides that I started doing. Even though they don't do very well, it's not about the views at that point. It's more about helping.
Yeah, because that's going to be a specific niche of people. So I'm sure they really appreciate them because some of those things are hard to find.
Because like right now, they might not do so well, but like later down the road, all of a sudden, like the ones from Heaven's Ward, like where the heck all these views come out of nowhere?
Yeah,
Because so many people get so confused with the Aether Currents from Heaven's Ward. It's just like,
did you
so many people?
Sorry, carry on.
Like so many people was just like, thank you. I was like, I couldn't find this Aether Current. I couldn't find this quest because it was an Ishgard.
So, speaking of old videos spiking, did you find, and if you did, which content was it on? Did you get a growth spike when Xbox got access to the game?
Quite frankly, I would never even, or I would never would know if it did or not. Because I look back sometimes, and this looks like it's this random, growth out of nowhere. So I probably would say maybe. I was hoping that the Xbox players would find my content, but no one has ever like say, "Oh, I'm an Xbox player," and I found that useful. No one has ever came out and said that. So probably, maybe.
So, going on about making videos, how do you find time to balance your time in the game between playing the game and enjoying it for what it is, and then obviously the research that you have to do for your videos, then logging in to record? Like how do you balance that personally? Do you like set days aside for each, or if you get a video idea on a whim, will you just go off and do that? How does that process work for you?
Well, a lot of the times it's like I said, trial and error. If I find something that works while I'm playing the game, then usually I would pick probably the next day to make it because I want to make sure that I get all my information about the topic that I'm talking about or doing, making sure that it works, making sure I have all the numbers right. So usually it's the next day that I do it. But something that's really easy, and then I can easily just pick up the mic and just do it the day of. And then usually I'll just do the day of, but a lot of times I just do research and trial and error, and then a day or two later make the video.
Speaking of passion for like the game, has your playing of previous entries in the main series, when you've noticed like the little Easter eggs they've like put in referencing those games, has that made that content hit that little bit extra?
If it's something that I know about, yes. But like I said, I only know if it's like a reference from anything before 8.
Yeah.
Most likely, I won't know about it unless someone says it in like a video.
Just going back to what you mentioned about Emmett Selk and the Hades reference, like obviously that got you.
Yeah.
So moving on from that, there anything else you want to talk about or bring up before we just recap a couple of things?
Not really much has come to mind that we haven't talked about already.
Awesome. So just we'll go with a question I'll be asking every guest on this podcast, obviously relevant to the game that they play. What would be your advice to new players of 14, and in terms of like what to expect and as things to do? We'll start with that before I ask you the next question.
All right. Number 1, never be afraid to ask questions. You will probably find 1 or 2 like really rude people, but trust me, we're not all like that. Always ask questions no matter how ridiculous you think it is. Okay? And you will always find that in 14 you will have a content lull between patches, and you will notice that because a lot of people won't be playing the game. Your friends might not be playing as often as they are because the content is going to be spread out a lot. And you just have to remember that if you are bored, play something else, because it's not always good to force yourself to play a game if you just have nothing to do. Like for me, if I'm bored in 14, there's nothing really to do, I will find something else to play, and then I'll let my body miss 14 to make me come back to continue playing again, or work on an achievement, or maybe find a different way of making gil, or finding something else to do to make a video on. But always take breaks if you have to. Never force yourself to play if you don't want to.
Moving on from that, what piece of advice or what did you learn in the game you wish you learned sooner? Like, just for example, I play mouse keyboard, and one of my friends came over to visit. He came and played as well, and he did not know that you could just bam 0 on the number pad to like turn Grand Company stuff in. And like he's been playing since 1.0 or A Realm Reborn, and he's literally just visited past April and didn't know that.
Yeah, there are some things in 14 that you do like come across that you didn't even know existed. So there's a lot of instances of that. Even if you're a veteran, you will still find things you didn't know about.
Oh, always. Is there anything that sticks out in your mind that you wish you were told sooner, maybe, or nothing that like jumps out to you at the moment?
Don't be afraid to try healer, because that was one of the things that I dreaded the most. But once you get into it and try it out, it's not really that bad, it's not really that hard. Also, when you're doing content, always do it on a DPS first. This way, when you come back as a healer and come back as a tank, you know exactly what comes next, you know what the tank busters look like, you know how much damage they do, and you know basically the fight and mechanics and stuff like that. So always start as a DPS before jumping in as a tank and a healer.
I never even thought of it like that before. I'll give you that one. Moving on to like the crafting gathering side of it. Any advice for players? One, leveling up. Like if they're just starting, how would you go about leveling them? Would you? I know previously you said you do the story first, then level your crafters. Do you make use of like levs, or do you grind the crafting log?
Well, in A Realm Reborn, you have basically the leave quests, the crafting log, the challenge log, and then your Grand Company turn-ins. Obviously, the turn-ins are once per day. Leave quests, you only can do as many as you have allowances, but you only get 6 per day. So basically, you only have is the crafting log at the time. But of course, you got your food buffs, you got your manuals from your grand company that you can use to speed up the process. You got the experience boosting earrings. I believe it works for crafters and stuff like that. But most of the time, it's making the gear from your crafting log. But as you get into Heaven's Ward, where you get collectibles, then you have basically the best way to level up because there's no limit on how many collectibles you can do in a day. So definitely when it comes to leveling up is just make everything in your crafting log because you get a boost for every time you make for the first time, and then you will rapidly level up as you get more avenues of getting experience.
Don't know if you'll have much information on this because obviously your crafters have been max for as long as you've been playing, essentially. Contradicting advice on between leveling, like you just said, with collectibles, or leveling, crafting, and gathering in Diadem/Firmament.
So the problem with the Firmament is that they make you repeatedly do the same recipe over and over and over again. Now the problem that I have with that, they're not teaching you increased difficulty and using different abilities as you level up and doing difficult, harder recipes. That's the problem that I had with that. Also, majority of the levels you can basically skip by doing the Firmament. So the recipes that are in the crafting log outside of that, a lot of those materials kind of get left in the waste because they're not buying them off the market board and using those materials, unless they're in the recipe from the Firmament. But if you're trying to power level, the Firmament is the best place to do it. But if you're trying to learn rising difficulty and learn your abilities as you go, then I would say do it outside of the Firmament. Gatherers definitely go into the Diadem because it's going to help you if you're going to be doing crafting as well. So that I do agree. But when it comes to learning how to craft, I would say don't do it through the Diadem.
So when it comes to, I'm just going to branch off because I just had another question come to mind. With ethereal reduction, you were, at least from what I saw on YouTube that was coming up on my homepage in the algorithm, one of the first ones to release the ethereal reduction video and which Aether Sand was which. How do you go about finding what does what? Is it literally just a case of testing everything, or is there like certain patterns that you notice that Square tend to use?
There are patterns. They started doing the ethereal reduction in Heaven's Ward, and there usually is one for botanist, one for miner, and then two for fisher when spearfishing came out. Otherwise, it was just bait and tackle fish. And when I was doing my fishing log, I found the one from Heaven's Ward, which I never did. So when it goes into Stormblood, like I said, they give you a spearfishing, and then they give you a bait and tackle fish, and then you have one for botanist, miner as well. And that's the pattern that they go with in Shadowbringers, Endwalker, and Dawntrail. So when a new expansion comes out, if you want to be the first person to find the Aether Sands, then for Fisher, then you basically just go through and find all the fishing holes and then try to catch as many as you can until you ultimately find the one that is a collectible. Because when you go into your fishing log, it will say if it's a reductible or not. And that will determine which one you can do for sands. It's always trial and error to find which one is from the basic sand and which one is the Fisher equivalent one. So in this case, Myth Brine, and then the Sun Guild Aether Sand. We get one that has one, and the other one has the other.
Awesome. So jumping into fishing, you sound like you've had a fair whack of experience with that as well. What I can't understand how people work out, or whether it's purely got through some form of data mining, is when, is it mooch when you leave your fish on the bait and send it back in?
Yep.
How they figure out which fish to mooch that causes the fish that they want to bite, like it blows my mind how people work this stuff out. If it's like legitimately worked out.
The mooch will light up if it's a moochable fish, so that's one indication. And probably the other half would be, like I said, like you said, data mining the fish. But I have no idea how people can figure out what is required for certain fish. I have no idea how they do it outside of data mining the content.
Yeah, because there's it goes. I'm not sure if it's deep as this, but I know it goes pretty deep in like certain times, weathers, etc. Bait, like how people can work that out is without data mining. If there's anyone doing that, like hats off to you. That's astounding.
Yeah, I always thought about that myself. How they figure it out the legitimate way, I will never know. You gotta be a masochist to do that without any help.
So we've briefly covered your content recap, the guild recap, Crafters Gathering. With regards to future content of the game, from your point of view, one, is there any particular type of content you would like them to stop or start? And are there any other jobs that you'd like to see make an appearance, even if it was as a limited job?
I know Mr. Happy always wants Puppet Master to be put in there.
Puppet Master is good.
If that is going to be a limited job, that would be pretty cool. If it's a real job, it would also be cool because it's like another pet job. I would like them to put in almost not saying the mascot from 10-2, but the gambler job from 10-2.
Yes,
I would like to see cards being flung at a high speed to damage your enemies or something like that.
Yeah, I mean they could. That's got very reminiscent of like Eorzea from 11. Very similar aspect to the gambler in the terms of it rolled dice, and depending on the dice roll, it did different things. They could merge the two of those. That could be quite interesting. So what about you mentioned the space exploration? Is there any other content you'd like to see? I mean, they have been teasing Blitzball for I don't know how many expansions now, and I believe it was years ago I read in an interview they were going to implement it, but they just weren't quite sure whether they wanted to go down the route of your character playing it or managing a team. If it did come to fruition, how would you like it to be implemented? Would you like it to be like one-on-one, or like each character's playing a different position? How do you think you'd get the most mileage in the game?
I would say make it only you are controlling everybody. I think that'll probably be the best thing they did if they do put Blitzball. Because if you let somebody else have a player, it's like, I don't know, I think it would be a little bit confusing, might be a little bit frustrating.
Like
so
the standard PvP.
it would have to be a solo thing if they do put it in. But I could do without it if they didn't. I would want Sphere Break to be put into Final Fantasy XIV. I think that'd be a pretty good additive to the Gold Saucer.
I'm gonna have to look this up really quick.
That was in 10-2.
Yeah, it's the one in Final Fantasy VII Reborn. Rebirth? It's Rebirth.
It's Rebirth.
So confused. Queen's Blood is the Fort Condor. It's very similar to Dominion, but I think Fort Condor does it better. But yeah, I think they could do with more mini games in Gold Saucer. The Chocobo Racing's done exquisitely. But like things like the G-Bike from Final Fantasy VII, I think they could put more content in without taking away what's already there.
Yeah.
So I think that's pretty much going to wrap us up. I am going to post your socials again into the chat. If you would just like to give maybe a rundown, recap of what you do, what you create content for, what platforms people can find you on. They'll be linked in the description of the podcast regardless. But if you just want to give yourself an outroduction, as it were?
Sure. So as you guys know, that I am a Final Fantasy XIV content creator. Do crafting, gathering, guild guides, solo guides with Blue Mage, noble jobs, Grand Company seal farming, and basically anything that has to do with currency in Final Fantasy XIV. You can easily find me on Twitter, or X if you want to call it that, at Zane Lionhart. That's H-A-R-T, not H-E-A-R-T. I had to switch my pronunciation of the last name when I switched over from Odin to Gilgamesh back in 2014. And of course, you got my Patreon, and you got the Discord as well. If you guys want to join that as well, you can ask me questions on there too if you like. But yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
For our closing thought and final bit of advice, impact has the game had on you as a journey, as a content creator?
Well, it's definitely impacted me emotionally. Gave me the confidence to do and follow something that I enjoy. Like, I tried real jobs, but YouTube is the one thing that gives me the most joy, accomplishment, and dopamine. After I make a good video, it just makes me feel like I'm on top of the world. It's really one of the best jobs you can ever do, because you know that you're making a difference in helping people and help them escape their lives in the process.
And aside from Final Fantasy, we've talked about that, 14, the series as a whole, how you got started on the genre with Mario RPG. Are there any other games that you're currently playing or would like to play that you'd like to recommend out to the listeners?
Well, I'm a huge Resident Evil fan. That was the first entry to the survival horror. I definitely got into Silent Hill. Definitely looking forward to the remake in a couple of days.
Pyramid Head all over again.
Yep. Besides the Final Fantasy series, I was always into the Mario. Sonic, that fell off, but that was always nostalgic for me. Devil May Cry series, I got into because of Resident Evil 4. I was always into the Assassin's Creed games. I always enjoyed the open world content of those games, and pretty much that's all that comes to mind for
and
different genres.
One last question in terms of your content creation. With your content creation in particular, it might not be applicable, but if you could do a collaboration with any Final Fantasy XIV creators, who would be like your top ones you'd want to do one with?
As much as I would like to be on State of the Realm with Sly and Happy, I think that one would be a little bit too much for me to handle, like too highbrow. I'm trying to think who else does podcasts. I was already on Chili's podcast.
But maybe not necessarily like podcasts as such, but like,
or regular YouTubers to collab with.
Yeah, like I know, like this is like miles off. I'd quite like to have a sit down with like Jesse Cox or Zeppler, and maybe even Koji at one point. But that's like way off in the distance.
Okay, now one does come to mind. Kyle and Garrett from Grinding Gear. That's one of them. I would definitely want to collab with because they seem very calm and chill to be around. So definitely them. Definitely enjoy their content. I think Jesse would definitely be definitely be another one that would be pretty cool to collab with.
So, unless you got anything else you want to share really quick, I think we'll wrap it up there.
That's pretty much about it.
Oh, well then, thanks very much. Thanks, guys. That takes care of the very first episode of Mognet. Huge thanks to Zane Lionhart for joining us, sharing your insights to your content creation, your journey, and your wealth of knowledge. I hope you've all enjoyed the conversation as much as I have. If you want to catch more content like this, feel free and be sure to follow the podcast and tune in for our next episode. The next guest is going to be a guy called Mike Does Audio. He's very big into the modding scene. His two big projects at the moment, he is currently in the process of reorchestrating the entire Final Fantasy VIII soundtrack, as well as implementing and replacing and creating sound effects for the entire game disc by disc. It's going to be a good one. So yeah, keep an eye out for that. Just keep an eye on my socials, at Chef Monkey Games on Twitter. That'll be where most of the information goes. And if not, just join the Discord, link in the description below. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And I'll see you all in the next adventure. Until then, happy gaming